Alright, so in today's Ask L, how to handle rejection, I hope that you're ready to get a little bit deep, because we're going to take this question a little bit deep. So this is fantastic Ask L by my fellow therapist, Joshua Goodchild, who asks how to handle rejection, or I suppose how to manage rejection. Now, rejection is an interesting one for the sole purpose of why do we feel so disheartened when we continue not to have something which never really belonged to us in the first place, right? Whether that's a job or a university place or a potential spouse. We didn't miss them before we tried to attain them, but after being rejected by that possible reality, we're heartbroken. And this is a very, very natural process that we all go through. I think that the crushing of hope is the most likely culprit for this feeling. We painted in our imagination a beautiful future which we have now unfortunately missed out on, and therefore we feel the pain of rejection. When we hope, we imagine a better future. When that future is crushed, we often hit a low. But this low is often temporary, so have faith in that, have hope in the fact that, or optimism in the fact that this pain after rejection is often very, very temporary. Many of us are optimistic by nature, but even those of us who are less optimistic will still tend to wallow and then summon hope for some other future or other version of future or a potential future shortly after experiencing the rejection in the first place. So the key message here is that hope is essential. It drives us to work towards a better future, but when that hope is unfortunately crushed, it can be very painful. But this doesn't negate the necessity of hope. It is very, very, very important to be hopeful. Viktor Frankl, for example, a Jewish psychiatrist who was unfortunately a prisoner of war in Auschwitz, found that the individuals who survived their time in the camps was not those who were best prepared. It was not those who were more hearty, more powerful. It was not those who were more manipulative. It was those who had hope of a better future where they'd be able to see their loved ones in a peaceful environment. So once again, when hope is crushed, it can be very, very painful. To manage this phase, having faith in yourself is essential. The truth is that our deep drivers, i.e. to succeed, to love, to grow, these drivers are all like rivers. If a river hits a hard rock, we will often navigate around that hard rock, or the river will navigate around that hard rock to reach the same end point eventually. So for example, if you don't get this job, if you don't get this spouse, you will find a similar endpoint or a similar version of that future which you hoped for. So even if you don't get that job which you were so working hard towards, don't worry, there is probably another job which is quite similar to it on the horizon, but we're still left with this crushing sense of rejection. So how do we deal with this? The issue with hope is that we're betting on an outcome which we don't fully have control. So therefore the question is, what do we have control over? Psychologically and hormonally, when we're hoping for something, we are readying ourselves for a very positive emotion that will be experienced when the future that we hoped for will come around. The issue is that when we don't receive that positive reward, we despair in the unfortunate negative emotion that we experience when we experience rejection. Now, for me personally, there are two psychological methods which I call on in times like this when we experience rejection. One is the Stoic method, which is summarized in the Stoic Bowman, which I'll talk about in a second. And the other is in self-conversation and self-exploration through conversation. I find these methods really help to balance the part of my brain which we can control, and also the part of our brain which we can't really control. So first of all, let's talk about the Stoic Bowman. The Stoic Bowman is, or the bowman is, or the archer, is in control the entire time until the moment that the arrow leaves the bow. So the archer can practice 100 hours a week. He can do all the necessary preparation, but he is still powerless the moment that the arrow leaves the bow. If the arrow is blown off track, if the target moves, etc., the archer is not in control anymore. This emphasizes preparedness, but also to surrender when we need to. We have to surrender to what we cannot control, because it is useless to attempt to control the uncontrollable. No matter how much the archer wants the arrow to fly straight, it will continue on its course once it leaves the bow, sorry. If the target moves, then the archer was not in control of the target moving, so therefore there was no point getting upset about that in the first place. Therefore, it is important for us to put in the work to execute control over our minds, our trade, our ability to essentially shoot for our goals. And also, that might even transfer into our specialities, but it is ultimately our ability to shoot for our goals. It is very, very important that we control and refine our ability to shoot, but we have to also surrender the emotional attachment to that attempt hitting the goal in the first place. So we can aim and we can shoot, but we cannot control whether or not that creates the desired outcome. Once again, the moment the arrow leaves, we have surrendered control. And for what we cannot control, we have no right to accept responsibility. Now, for me, this metaphor beautifully illustrates to me where my focus should be and where it shouldn't be. Therefore, crush the interview and don't take the results to heart. It is just feedback. Ask the person out on a date. Don't fear the answer. The answer is just a reflection of that individual who you're asking out. It is not a reflection of who you are. Open the business, do the marketing, and let the market tell you whether you're aiming straight. It's just a feel out period. Develop the business. See if the market reacts. The market reaction is something that you're not in control of, but something that you can learn from. Developing the business is something that you're in control of. Don't internalize the perception of others or the reactions of the environment to what you're trying to achieve. You have no right to. Aim straight, and if you miss, you pick yourself up and you take another shot. And that is the only thing that we're ever in control of. Now, the other, I suppose, strategy which I implement after I've been, rejected, or I've experienced rejection, is introspective conversation, i.e. speaking to yourself. This is my second intervention when managing rejection. The unconscious mind, just to give you a little bit of background, is where we often dump all of the beliefs and feelings and sensations that we don't feel fits within our psyche. Our psyche is the personality which we wear, and the part of our personality or part of our mind which we display to others. It's not our true self, it's our mask. One problem is that often how we feel deep down isn't acceptable for our psyche to portray. For example, if we haven't succeeded during a job interview, we would want to openly display anger, jealousy, egotistical behaviour. We might want to declare that we should have got the job because we're much smarter than the competition, but to do so is unfortunately socially unacceptable, especially if we were to direct this emotion to the person that we want to, i.e. if we were to have a real ruckus and a real argument with the interviewer and say that you should have chosen me, why did you choose the other interviewer, I was best for the job. You might want to do that deep down, but it's not a socially acceptable thing to do. So the first step is to acknowledge that all of these feelings, despite being socially unacceptable, have an absolute right to exist. You should never shame yourself for feeling a certain way. These feelings should be recognized in their own right. You might deem it as immoral for outwardly expressing these emotions, but it is not immoral and it is not unethical to feel them in the first place. We should recognize them and accept them because they're a part of who we are. One metaphor I use to summarize this is whatever emotions I'm feeling, I put them in a metaphorical gun and I put them on my holster, and I know that that gun is loaded with anger, with jealousy, with the ability with the notion to harm or the notion to deceive, but it is completely under my control whether or not I shoot them off or not. Therefore, I feel them, I recognize them, I feel them on my waist, but it is completely up to me whether or not I shoot off those feelings. The next stage is to converse with ourselves about these feelings. This is where we talk to the other personas or parts of the brain that might otherwise not have a chance to express themselves. For example, a common trend for me is I will work myself into the ground. If I had a choice, I wouldn't sleep, I wouldn't eat, I would sometimes even avoid socializing because the dominant part of my personality loves to work. But I have to acknowledge that there are other parts of my personality which don't want to work that hard and might want a rest from time to time. So my conversation with myself might go something like this. Now I've posted all of this information below. So below I will label A as my dominant persona and B as my secondary driver, or my less dominant, my more submissive personas. So I, as A, might say, God, I feel so tired. Why do I feel so tired? And I will wait and I will listen, and the voice which comes back to me might be, because I need a rest. I'm working 8 hours a week. I want to sleep. I want to spend a day in bed. I want to play PS4 and eat junk food. Once again, myself or my dominant persona might say, I hear you, and I'm sorry that I guess I've really been working us into the ground. And I might hear my other, parts of my subconscious mind say, can't we just do nothing tonight? In fact, next week, can we just not exercise or train? I need the lane in the morning to recover. And I will negotiate and say, yeah, okay, I guess we have been working pretty hard. That sounds like a good idea. We can do that. So I basically give that part of my mind a chance to vent, but then as well as that, I negotiate for an outcome that works well for the both of us. So I'm essentially counselling myself. I can reach a solution this way, and I often find a private room to have these conversations aloud. So I literally talk to myself out loud, and I find a solution every time. So a conversation from rejection after an interview might be something like dominant mind speaking to non-dominant mind. You're feeling pretty rubbish, aren't you? And the non-dominant mind might say, yeah, I should have got that job. Stupid interviewers. I get you. They've missed out big time. They should have hired you, but they obviously, haven't seen the true potential in you. This is me soothing my subconscious. And my subconscious might say, haven't they just? They've completely missed out. But right now, I feel like I might not even recover from this rejection or, reach my end goal in future. Then you might say, well, why do you say that? I provide some evidence. And then the subconscious mind might say something like, well, now that I think of it, this is only one of the few times where I haven't got what I wanted. And then the dominant part of your mind, once again, might console that subconscious part of your mind to say, and you only have to be right once out of every 5 or 10 or 20 times in an attempt to get ahead, right? Essentially, going for a job interview is a pretty low risk experience. You haven't really got much to lose going through a job interview, so we could just try again. And you might say, well, yeah, that's true actually, I feel a lot better now. So you're basically coaching your mind aloud to try and reach a position where all of your personas and your mind feel pretty good. But it's important to recognize that we are not simple individuals. We have many different drivers that are often conflicting drivers within us. One part of you might be peaceful and might want to help people, and the other part of you might want to bash their heads from time to time, and it's absolutely fine to feel like that. So in short, we can control our attitude and we can soothe our minds, but we cannot control the outcome. The only option, like the bowman, is to keep attempting to hit the target. And when we don't hit the target, we stand up, we brush ourselves off, and we take another shot. And when you know that you're not going to hit the target every time, a great relationship to develop is the art of practice. i.e., we need to learn to love practicing. We need to love taking tests, building businesses, flirting, dating, taking interviews, new challenges, training, etc. We want to fall in love with the behavior that produces the desired outcome. If you love the process, the desired outcome is a bonus, and you can kind of surrender yourself in that aspect. But this is obviously all a lot easier said than done. You may want to speak to someone who can help you to fall in love with the process and to also reduce chronic emotional fluctuations. If you're in pain or if you're not in the best physical condition, then feel free to book a free consultation with our team of osteopaths, sports therapists, physios and personal trainers, face-to-face or online. All of our services are online as well as being available face-to-face. If your emotions are all over the place or if you don't feel well in yourself, then speak to one of our counsellors once again during a free consultation. We have other services like herbal medicine too, all available in Gravesend and online, and we all offer free consultations. So if you need any help, please do not suffer in silence. Book a free consultation. Remember, if you've got an Ask Girl, all you need to do is hashtag Ask Girl or comment below or do both, Let me know any of your health and fitness related questions. Joshua, it was a pleasure to answer this question for you. Please keep them coming. Thank you.